All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, the new general manager of the New York Giants, Joe Shane, got his guy to be the new head coach, as Brian Daboll will be the 22nd head coach in the history of the New York Football Giants. Now, the Giants had competition for the services of Daboll, as a team like the Miami Dolphins was in pursuit of him as well. Now, Dable became a hot commodity during this coaching cycle due to the development of Josh Allen as a starting quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. Now, Dable spent the last 4 years with Allen as the Bills' offensive coordinator, and the quarterback who many people questioned his ability coming out of Wyoming are now praising him as one of the best signal callers in the NFL. And with that said, a lot of that credit can go to Dable. Now, before becoming offensive coordinator of the Bills, Dable spent 4 years as the tight ends coach for the New England Patriots, while he also had a year under Nick Saban at Alabama as the school's offensive coordinator. Now, Dable will now be charged with having to turn around one of the worst offenses in the National Football League. As surprisingly, you have to go all the way back to week 16 of the 2019 NFL season to find the last time that the Giants were able to score at least 30 points in a contest. So we're talking about more than two full football seasons for Big Blue being able to get 30 points or more on the board. Now, for Dave, fixing the Giants' offense won't be easy, as they have a ton of questions about their offensive line as well as quarterback Daniel Jones. Now, overall, the Giants are not a quick fix, as this team has numerous issues. I talked briefly about their offensive line, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. They're simply not that good. So, with that said, you got to go out there and fix it. Daniel Jones at quarterback. Is he going to be your guy? And anybody who's listening to me on this channel knows that I'm not a big fan of the Giants keeping Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback going forward. I don't feel like he has shown enough in his 3 years in the NFL with the Giants. Like I said, he's 12 and 25 as a starter. It's just a lot not to be overly excited for if you've seen him play. But for Giants co-owner John Mara, he feels like, Daniel Jones has not been given a fair shake, so to speak, in the NFL. So there are going to be people out there that are going to look at Daniel Jones and they're going to say, well, if Brian Daboll could do it for Josh Allen, he could also do it for Daniel Jones. Big difference. Daniel Jones is not Josh Allen. Daniel Jones has talent. Don't get me wrong, but I've seen enough, regardless of the offensive line, regardless of the quote unquote skill players around him, to see that he is simply not that guy. Uh, the Giants, like I said, more than likely they're probably going to stick with Daniel Jones this season, but he's not going to be their only option in quarterback. I see them bringing in a veteran quarterback who's going to, push Daniel Jones for playing time. And I think the Giants are either going to draft a quarterback at some point this year, or they're going to let this thing play out this year and go out there and either try to get themselves a quarterback in free agency the following year or through the draft. We'll have to wait and see. But nonetheless, I just don't see Daniel Jones as a long term option for this team. Now, fixing the offensive line, the Giants have a lot of draft capital. And I think that right there is something that is intriguing to this new regime, because they have an opportunity to hit the ground running and try to fix this thing. And I think in this draft, they will have an opportunity to build this team from within the trenches. You look at it, the Giants are picking fifth overall. They're also picking seventh overall, as they have the first round pick of the Chicago Bears. They also have Chicago's fourth round pick. So there's an opportunity here for the Giants to kind of pick up um, and try to turn this thing around. It's going to be easier said than done. as far as this regime between Joe Shane and Brian Daboll go. Now, credit to John Mara, the Giants co-owner, because he said before he even hired a general manager that he was going to stay out of the way and let said general manager hire his head coach and let the head coach and the GM hire the coaches. So far, John Mara's done that because you see with Brian Dable coming in, you know who did that hiring, and it's Joe Shane, because obviously these guys worked together with the Buffalo Bills over the last several years, with Joe Shane being the team's assistant general manager, while of course Dable was the OC. Now, in regards to the Giants head coaching hire, it came down to the Bryans. It was either going to be Dable or Flores. And I know that the Giants interviewed Brian Flores multiple times. I know that John Mara reached out to Brian Flores. But the bottom line is, I think the better fit was Brian Daboll. And the reason why, it's the familiarity with Joe Shane. I think that's the biggest thing. I do believe in my heart of hearts, and I could be wrong, that John Mara wanted Brian Flores. And you figure he did reach out to Brian Flores prior to even hiring Joe Shane as the team's general manager. On paper, I think it would have been a very intriguing and good story if the Giants had hired Brian Flores, him being a Brooklyn guy, him having previous head coaching experience. But in the end, it just wouldn't have worked out because it would have seemed more like a John Mara hire as opposed to a Joe Shane hire. And this is what the Giants are, quote unquote, attempting to get away from. So the bottom line is, you have to have everybody on the same page. And I do feel that Brian Dable and Joe Shane are going to be on the same page because they've worked together for so many years prior to coming to the Giants. Now, you look at it and you have to ask yourself, have the Giants finally figured this thing out? And honestly, we're going to have to wait and see on that because, we've been down this road several times with the Giants, and there are people who are intrigued and saying, hopefully, this is the year they turn it around. Hopefully, this is the year they do this. Hopefully, this is the year they do that. But the bottom line is this. This is going to be the Giants' brain trust going forward for the next couple of years. But I will say the next couple of months are going to be ultra important for this Shane Dable regime as far as getting things turned around for the Giants. They have some hard line decisions that they have to make. Like I said, this team is in salary cap purgatory, but I think the Giants' biggest way to get things turned around is going to be through the draft. And like I said, this is not a quick fix. So if anybody who's out there who's a Giant fan thinks that this team is all, gonna, put some pixie dust over this problem and go out there and immediately contend for the NFC East crown, we'll have to wait and see because they have a lot of holes on this team on the offensive side of the ball. The defense has been solid in recent years, but they haven't had an offense to hold up their end of the bargain. And then the other thing is this: with that said, is Brian Daboll going to retain the services of Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator? We'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of questions for this team overall, especially when there is personnel change in the front office because the GM wants to have his guy in there, which is what Joe Shane did and Brian Daboll. And of course, Brian Daboll wants to have his guys in there as coaches. And then, of course, they want to have their type of players in there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. This is not, and it's not going to be an overnight fix for the Giants because this problem that the Giants have had didn't just get here overnight. I mean, again, only two winning seasons since you last won the Super Bowl in 2011, only one playoff appearance, no playoff victories. Seven out of the last 8 seasons for the Giants have ended with them losing at least 10 games. So, with that said, it's a culture issue, and culture changes and culture issues are something that you just don't change like that. It's going to take time. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Dable gets his guys in there, who he hires for his coaches. And like I said before, this upcoming draft in a couple of months, this is where the foundation is either going to be laid for Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, or they are just going to continue to add to the problem that we have seen from this Giants organization for so long. Not surprised that the Giants got Brian Daboll. The writing was on the wall after the Joe Shane hire. Brian Flores made it very interesting in the hiring process because I do think that John Mara really liked him. However, cooler heads prevailed, and he allowed Joe Shane to hire his guy. So let's see what the Shane and Dayball regime are going to lead to for the Giants. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And just before I tune off, there is one comment here in the chat box from Andre. What's going on, Andre? How you doing out there? And Andre says, plain and simple, clean house. Because when they start losing, they have nobody to blame but themselves. I do think there are going to be some changes to the Giants, but I don't think it's going to be as many as people expect, and it's due to the fact of the salary cap situation that the Giants are in. The Giants are going to be anywhere between $5 to $7 million over the cap, and with some of that money guaranteed, I just don't see them cutting guys just for the sake of cutting them and still, having to deal with that cap hit. That's going to be the biggest thing. It's not just the salary, it's the cap hit as well. But luckily for them, they do have the opportunity to do something in the draft with the early draft capital that they have. So will they trade back with some of those picks and get up and look for more picks? I don't know. I mean, it's all going to depend about who's available because again, the Giants just are not a quick fix. That's the bottom line. So we're gonna have to play with the whole wait and see, mentality and see how long it's gonna take Big Blue to figure this out. I mean, Giant fans are tired. The Giant fans are sick and tired of being sick and tired, with that said. And Andre saying that he meant the coaching staff. Yeah, definitely. It's a situation typically, like I said, GMs want their head coach. Head coaches want their guys, as coordinators, both sides of the ball, linebackers, coach, D coordinators, you name it. They simply want their guys. So it's going to be interesting to see with the job that Patrick Graham has done, over the last couple of years with the Giants D. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Giants, this new coaching regime, at least interview him for the GM job, for the D coordinator job to stay on there. I mean, there are rumors about the Pittsburgh Steelers possibly wanting Patrick Graham. That could be intriguing for Patrick Graham as well, due to the fact that he'll have an opportunity to contend for a playoff spot next year, depending on who is the starting quarterback for the Steelers. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. We'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be interesting to see where this organization heads with the Dayball and Shane regime. Got some more comments here from a pimp named Slapback. What's going on, man? How you doing? Apparently, the Joe Shane sent scouts to check out 4 games of Malik Willis at Liberty this year, and he would be a great quarterback match with Brian Daboll. Now, to your point, I have been seeing a lot of hype on. Let me rephrase that. Not hype, a lot of people touting Malik Willis on social media, and I have seen him play a little bit last year, and I can tell you the kid can ball. So it's going to be interesting because we see it every year where there's one or two guys that go to the scouting combine out of the smaller schools and really shine, and there's always a couple of guys every year that go to the bowl games, Senior Bowl, East West Shrine Game, you name it, and go out there and really ball and improve their draft stock. We saw it last year. I know Trey Lance did not participate in any of those games. But the thing was, Trey Lance had a lot of hype for him, even though he did not play his last college football season. And the Niners, we saw the 49ers trade up and take him third overall. So, to your point, I think that, the Giants are going to take a quarterback at some point this year because I like in the draft, because I don't see how they can commit to Daniel Jones any more than they already have. And again, you're asking a new general manager and a new head coach who didn't draft this guy to go out there and attach themselves to DJ. I just simply don't see it happening. I mean, if it was after Daniel Jones's first year, maybe. But, after Daniel Jones's third year, no. And I mean, honestly, we've seen head coaches in the past, remove themselves from a quarterback after 1 year. Remember, Josh Rosen was taken in the first round the year before Cliff Kingsbury became the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And typically, when you saw Kingsbury coming in, you figured that Kingsbury was going to stick with Josh Rosen, the quarterback. That was not the case. He went for Kyler Murray, and the rest is history. But in this case right here, we've had 3 years of Daniel Jones. So we know what he can and cannot do. And with a record of 12 and 25, obviously one thing he cannot do is win enough games at the NFL level. So like I've said before, it's time for the Giants to look at another direction. And like you're saying right there as well with Daniel Jones's neck injuries are in sports in general are not something that you need to really overlook. Neck injuries have to be taken very serious. We saw what happened with another Giants first round pick many years ago in David Wilson. And David Wilson was an outstanding athlete coming out of Virginia Tech. And, the future was very bright for him. He suffered that neck injury. That was it. Sterling Sharp, and obviously I'm not comparing Daniel Jones to Sterling Sharp, but nonetheless, we saw Sterling Sharp was on the fast track to the Hall of Fame when that neck injury ended his career. And the way that Daniel Jones plays quarterback, because you figure what we've seen from him so far is after, he doesn't see that first read, he's taking off running. And the way that he's sliding, and he took that big hit against the Philadelphia Eagles, and then of course earlier this season when he tried to dive headfirst for the touchdown against Dallas, and he suffered a concussion. So these are things that you have that are piling up, and if you're a quarterback and you can't stay healthy, and you're basically spending a good chunk of your time on the sidelines and set and sweats with the headpiece in your ear, listening to the offensive coordinator and your replacement at the quarterback position, you're not helping the team. So that's a big thing right there. We've talked about, to your point about Daniel Jones's injury. Joe Shane talked about a lot of the Giant injury issues this past season, and no new GM and no new head coach want guys to play for them that are hurt. That's the bottom line. So we are going to see where this regime goes. From what you're hearing from a lot of people, Joe Shane is a very detail oriented guy. I guarantee you, he's going to look at the game tape, he's going to look at the roster, and I've said that before, and they are going to evaluate every potential draft prospect with a fine tooth comb, because this is the first draft for Shane and Dable together with the Giants. And it's going to be their most important one because they have to set their foundation for what they can or cannot do in the next coming year. So only time will tell. But like I said before, I really think that it was imperative that the Giants took Brian Daboll over Brian Flores due to the fact of the familiarity between he and Dable from their time in Buffalo. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank all of the great people out there for their comments in the chat box. We'll be back on here real soon. Just a lot to talk about for this weekend with conference championship Sunday in the National Football League. A lot of good action in the NBA as well. I got a lot of good stuff to talk to you folks about. So please stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in once again. And I'm William Martin signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.